Good morning. Oh, 2 days in a row, I had no clue. In fact, it was only about 15, 20 minutes ago, approximately, that I even came to a title for today's video. In yesterday's video, I was surprised. I noticed after I had already put it up that I spelled integration. I put an extra R in integration, and then I didn't even notice that I had put 2013 instead of 2012. I got a year ahead of myself. And I thought that was humorous that I made two mistakes in the title. Of course, I've corrected them on YouTube now, but Facebook, it'll, I guess, continue to be the wrong way because it was posted that way. Anyway, and it also in the title page, it'll be the wrong way forever, because I can't go back and edit the title page, I don't think. In any case, the title that I finally settled on for this morning is Returning to Normalcy. Yeah, right. And I did write a little blurb. With all that has been happening in my life this year, there has been a strong desire to return to a more normal life. As I meditate on that desire, Spirit seems to be saying that a new normal is heading my way. In fact, this is not only happening for me, it is happening for everyone on planet Earth. In case you haven't noticed, things are changing. I know, some cannot see it. Yet for those that look, it is obvious that major things are happening all over the globe. This is the Great Awakening, and nothing will be as it was. When I had the desire and recognized the desire in myself to return to normal, what I really mean is to be able to get in my automobile and go where I want to go and not have to worry about police stopping me and putting me through some kind of interrogation or worse. And I've really, even though I've had several of my friends have been very willing to come and give me rides, including some of my neighbors, it has been a very awkward thing for me to have to ask people for rides. And it's actually been more costly, even though people are not charging me, well, except in one instance, sort of. But people are not charging me to give me rides. But I feel a desire to help people, because many of the ones that have been giving me rides have been people that have financial needs themselves. So I'm only too happy in that respect to be able to help them. Nevertheless, it's awkward for me, since I've always been so independent since my teenage years when I first got a driver's license. I've always been able to just be mobile and then to go at will. And this year, first it was the threat that they were going to come and steal my house. And so for over 2 months, I very rarely left for any length of time. I would only make very short trips to the store or the bank or the post office, or in some cases the courthouse. But I would make very short trips and return home almost always no more than a half an hour or so. And that went on for actually more than 2 months, from February the 15th till toward the end of April, when I finally was able to start getting in my vehicle and feeling safe to drive again. And then, of course, a month later, it turns again on me, and I get arrested and threatened that if I get caught driving, I will go straight to jail. And so I didn't drive at all, and I'm once again on a restriction. So I've spent, at this point in time, close to 4 months out of the year. That's 7.5 months into it. I've spent about 4 months uh, on restriction. And when I think of that, and when I say the word on restriction, in a sense, when I look at some of the things that are waking up in me and waking up in the human family, humans have been on restriction for a very long time, and that has been the norm, even though it may not involve travel. I mean, think of the people that don't have some of the things that we in the Western world enjoy and take for granted. Think of the restrictions and the limitations based on the way money, for example, has been distributed on this planet, where you've got a relative handful of people controlling such a vast amount of the resources, while most of the world suffers in poverty and lack. And yet I've heard people say when they go to India or Mexico or some of the so-called third world countries, some of which are becoming first world countries, by the way, but when they go to these things, the people are happier than they are in the dog-eat-dog Western culture of the United States and Europe, which are supposed to be first world countries, and of course Canada. In any case, the world is going through massive changes. People are literally waking up and becoming aware of things that we were never aware of before. People weren't aware that there was, for the most part, that there was such a thing as an Illuminati or an elite establishment. They weren't aware that there was a conspiracy of bankers and that the financial system was rigged. They weren't aware that many things were happening in our world that just simply were not true. They weren't aware that religions had poison injected into them, and they were spreading things that made people weaker instead of strengthening people. We weren't aware of that. We just took it for granted. Well, that's the way it is. And so we lived in perhaps a more blissful ignorance than this chaotic awakening. And the awakening is chaotic, and it must be, because the old paradigm, there are people still trying to make the old paradigm continue when it is in its death throes. And some people don't see that it's in its death throes, and they think, well, they have all the weapons, they have all the money, they have all this. Speaking of they, those wonderful elite people, those wonderful psychopaths that want to rule the world with an iron fist, which represent the human shadow coming into greater power, so to speak, and yet it's not greater power because they're no longer hidden. You see, that kind of dark power can only work when it's unconscious. Once it becomes conscious, the lights come on and people are able to see things that they weren't able to see before. And a lot of it is simply perspective. A lot of it is simply taking a different point of view of the exact same thing, and it totally changes its meaning. And this is what's happening as we look at the world. We say, oh yeah, that's the way it's always been, but it's wrong. It's crooked. It's fraudulent. And we recognize the deception that we couldn't even see before. And this is happening in our religions, in our education systems, in our governments, in our corporations, in every structure and all through the fabric of human society. We're recognizing that it's insane. It's absolutely been crazy. We didn't know that before. We didn't know that before. And knowing it now, it can never be like it was. We can never return to the good old days of normalcy. And I want you that sit on the top of the pyramid, that think you've been running everything, to recognize that there's no such thing as returning to the way it used to be. Because people are waking up. And I have people tell me all the time, but Ron, look at the masses. The masses aren't waking up. Yes, in our little circle, things seem to be People seem to be waking up and becoming more and more aware. That's true. It's happening in our circle. But go out into the streets, go out into the marketplace, go out into the places where people gather, and you're not going to find the awakening. Most people are still asleep. That's probably true. It's probably true. However, it doesn't take the majority to shift everything in the world. Look at the way the world has always been. Look at what we called normal. There were a relative handful, 13 families, some say, that were literally running the world. They literally controlled the world resources, the world economy, the world everything. Pretty much nothing escaped their control. Pretty much nothing did. It was a relative handful of people that controlled the whole world. What about the awakening? Think of it this way. There is a greater handful of people that are awake right now than there were those that on the so-called dark side that were controlling everything previously back in the old days, when we were all asleep, or the vast majority, a greater vast majority was asleep. Now, we've got an exponentially growing number of human beings on this planet that are awakening. Yes, we awaken first to what is negative. That's the way it works, folks, because these are the things that have been given to us as gifts to get our attention. That gets our attention because it takes us out of our comfort zone, and we perceive it and judge it as something negative. Yet it's not negative, folks. It's really not. It's positive because we are becoming aware of things that we weren't aware of before. Things that were unconscious are now becoming conscious. We are becoming knowledgeable that we can talk to our bodies and our very cells listen to us and hear what we're saying. We can talk to water, and the water responds because we're recognizing that consciousness is what it's all about. And those that are becoming conscious are coming into greater power, greater authority, greater possibilities than ever before, simply because we're recognizing that what I think and how I talk to things and how I feel about things, and by embracing the feelings and recognizing that there just might be a gift even in the negative feelings, by recognizing these things, we are changing the world. We are not going to go back to the good old days. We're creating the good new days. And it's a new world. It's a new age. It's a new awakening. It's a revival of spiritual truth that sets the captives free. And we have been the captives. We're not going to go back to the way it used to be. Even when we have that nostalgia and long for that time when everything seemed less chaotic, and it was, we recognize that it was less chaotic in many instances simply because we were clueless about what was happening. We just took everything for granted and at face value, and well, that's the way it is. We don't do that's the way it is anymore. We don't go that way anymore. Those of us that are awakening, we don't want to accept the way it is, or more precisely, the way it was. Instead, we have our future. We see how it can be. And how it can be, we find that drawing us like a magnet to create that, to imagine that, to bring that into manifestation. This is what's happening in 2012. Yeah, it looks chaotic. Yeah, it looks like the old structure is still in place. But folks, I'm telling you, it's not. And those of you that are on the internet, go to my Facebook wall. My God, people are posting things all the time that are significant happenings around the world. And messages of liberation are popping up everywhere. Things are not going to go back to normal, folks, because there's a new normal being created. and the visionaries, the people that go into the spiritual aspects of things are the ones that are changing it. Yeah, some of us get discouraged because it's not happening quickly enough, but it is happening, and it is accelerating, or at least it seems to me to be accelerating. Over the past year and a half that I've been doing these videos, I have watched enormous change take place. Anyway, Spirit encouraged me with this message, and I hope encouraged you as well, to stop longing for the good old days because they weren't so good, and let them be old, and know that we're moving into something brand new that will alter the way we live our lives on this planet forever. I leave you with these thoughts. Thank you for listening. Namaste.